Hey, it's me again. You can only see the top half of me right now, but I'm wearing esports sweatpants, so the fit is unforgivable. Assassin's Creed 1 is a bad game. I've talked to an extent about my hatred for Assassin's Creed on this channel before, but in my opinion, the franchise represents everything bad and wrong about Ubisoft's philosophies in game design. For starters, they literally sucked like all of the color and life out of this game. Look how boring and gray everything is. It's like they want me to be bored while I'm playing this game. Every single environment blends together and it makes for a really bland and repetitive experience, which of course is not helped by how bland and repetitive the story is. Assassin's Creed 1 features the worst protagonist in the whole series, I would argue. Altair is a blank slate of nothingness that has no defining features and is the personification of like uncooked tofu. Pair this with like a wholly uninteresting and clunky story and it makes you wonder how this game spawned one of the most successful video game franchises of all time. Like what I'm wearing right now, this game is basically unforgivable by today's standards. Hey, look, if you like it, power to you. Considering your taste, next I would probably recommend paint drying and consuming paste. I did everything I could to speedrun my way through this game. I gave it more than a fair enough chance to impress me, and after collecting enough useless feathers and inadvertently lobotomizing myself, I rolled credits on Assassin's Creed 1 about 6 months ago. At the end of my experience, I can safely say that I thought it was shit, and I don't recommend it. So naturally, I jumped headfirst into Assassin's Creed 2. Assassin's Creed 2 is heralded by many as the best Assassin's Creed game in the series. With a 4.2 on Gaming Letterboxd, I thought it was going to be a way more enjoyable experience than the first game. And it was. Barely. Once again, they sacrificed most of the world's color for this pathetic attempt at aesthetic realism, which does not work out in their favor. The vibrant, colorful period that was the Italian Renaissance is given the same visual aesthetic treatment as a middle-of-the-road Call of Duty game. However, unlike Assassin's Creed 1, Assassin's Creed 2 has a few redeeming qualities, namely having an actually good protagonist in the form of Ezio. Ezio is charismatic and funny and actually likable compared to his predecessor. And the world he inhabits, albeit still drained of most of its life, is more interesting on average than the first game. And the assassination mechanics are actually like slightly improved upon from the first game, but ultimately, it's a lifeless Ubisoft product, especially in the second half. Assassin's Creed 2 suffers from a lot of the same boring filler content that Assassin's Creed 1 suffers from. Ubisoft sucks at side content. There's barely any incentive to stray away from the main story of a Ubisoft game because they don't really give you any tangible rewards for completing side content. A lot of the side content in these games revolves around collecting things that don't actually pertain to the main story. The only other character that's remotely interesting in this game is Leonardo da Vinci, who they actually do like a pretty decent job of personifying. But much like the first game, Assassin's Creed 2 is an absolute blur of a game that I barely remember playing 6 months after the fact. Despite marginally improving on the horrible foundation that the first game laid out, Assassin's Creed 2 is still a hollow, lifeless, soulless Ubisoft product. And again, if you're a fan, zero beef. Zero animosity. I am jealous of your ability to enjoy things that I find just mid. So naturally, after completing the first 2 games, I moved on to the third. At this point, completing Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 back-to-back had turned me into a shell of a human. I had forgotten what it was like to enjoy a video game, or to even see color, much like my illustrious peer Logan Paul. So imagine my surprise when Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered actually has color in it, and it still managed to be an insanely middling experience. What? At the beginning of the game, Benjamin Franklin tasks you with finding the 700 pages of his almanac that he lost, and it's at this point that you realize it's going to be another race to the credits. Despite the remastered version offering an actually like kind of pretty setting, Assassin's Creed 3 is trying to do way too many things at once. It wants to have this naval ship combat, but doesn't really commit enough to that system for it to be enjoyable. And it also switches protagonists a third of the way through the story, which is a refreshing story gimmick for sure, but I don't give a fuck about Connor and his tribe because of that. I don't give a fuck about these characters, and Connor is another frankly irritating protagonist to follow. All of Ezio's charm and charisma is replaced with Connor's stubborn, annoying personality, and I don't give a fuck about his tribe. I like the setting of the American colonies, and I think it's cool to see George Washington and Paul Revere and all these fucking chuckle fucks, but I could not give less of a fuck about anything going on here. The story is contrived, the characters are annoying, and despite having the prettiest setting I think yet, it squanders that on having the same boring missions from the first 2 Assassin's Creeds. This game is filled with just horrible tailing missions, an annoying fast travel system, and just completely questionable game design choices. All 3 of these games struggle to capture the intensity that most stealth games are known for. One of my favorite franchises of all time in any medium is Dishonored. I'll dedicate a whole video to those games someday. They're truly amazing experiences, in my opinion, especially the second one. But what makes those games so intense and special is because they understand how to do stealth gameplay, something that the first 3 Assassin's Creed games fail to grasp entirely. There are some standout moments and missions from these games, for sure. Not 100% of the content in these 3 games are bad, but there are so many games that do stealth gameplay just so much better than these games, which sucks because stealth games are like my favorite subgenre of video games. So theoretically, these games should be right up my alley. But Ubisoft have bogged these games down with enough clunky game design choices that to me, they're just unfortunate wastes of potential. And rarely do I advocate for not supporting game developers or people who make creative things in general, but if you're gonna play these games at this point, maybe there's some pirating to be done. After rolling credits on the 3rd game, after a solid 22 hours spent on it, I was fucking exhausted. I had just steamrolled my way through 3 of the most middling experiences I'll ever have, and I needed something that was gonna breathe the life back into me. So, wisely, I decided to put a pause on my progress through the Assassin's Creed franchise indefinitely. And so 6 months have gone by since then. And the last 6 months of my life have been the craziest 6 months of my life. I've been going to fucking concerts and clubs and ingesting a lot of questionable things. I've forged bonds with people who I never thought I'd be close with. And I've also lost people who I thought were gonna be in my life forever. And I've had to deal with all of the hard parts of growing up and learning how to be independent and all of the messy, explosive things that come with transitioning from adolescence into adulthood. And I'm still the same helpless child that I was 6 months ago, but I have a greater understanding of who Finian is and what I value and how to live my life in a way that I want to. And I don't know about you, but I want to live my life not playing boring gray blobs of video games regurgitated straight from the mouth of the beast. And so for the past 6 months, I've played a fuck ton of just colorful explosions of video games that have reminded me why I fell in love with gaming in the first place. I have a good, comfortable, chill life that I wake up eternally grateful for every single day, but I've sat in the back of the class countless times watching the clock, just waiting for a chance to slip into Skyrim or Cyberpunk. Because in learning who I am, I've learned that I value this kind of escapism. I think we all do. It's why we doom scroll on TikTok for hours at a time, no matter how grateful we are for our lives. And so, for the past 6 months, I've indulged in so many forms of escapism, and I've found a great deal of solace in it. And for the first time in my life, in this insanely transitory period of my life that I'm in, I'm spending the summer away from home for the first time. I have this internship. Shit, you say? I need to stop. I have this internship halfway across the country from where I grew up, so I'm learning to be forcibly independent, which is a decision that most of my friends did not make this summer. What this means is that I'm out here right now basically by myself. I have a couple friends kicking around, but we're not indulging ourselves in the wild nights that we did when everybody was here. And, gratefully, this has given me plenty of time to play video games. And so, here I am 6 months later, after a great deal of living and breathing and sorting out life's many messes and playing a fuck ton of amazing explosions of video games, I decided that it's about time to unpause my progress on the Assassin's Creed franchise. Even after an incredibly mid experience with the first 3 games of the franchise, I had full faith that there would be at least one of these games that I treasure. And speaking of treasure, laddie, Assassin's Creed 4 is not an amazing game. I like a lot of games more than I like Assassin's Creed 4. But I think more than anything, I'm just so happy that a franchise that I've been so historically disappointed in has finally given me like a halfway decent experience. There are still some points where I got frustrated, right? It's an Assassin's Creed game made by Ubisoft. It's not exactly begging me to 100% it, but I really enjoyed my time with this game. Because Assassin's Creed 4 is colorful. It's filled with little game design moments that make the world feel alive and lived in and realized, and it's not a gray, lifeless corpse of a game like the first one. The water is a deep turquoise. The forests are filled with lush greenery. Each town is uniquely colorful in its own way. Assassin's Creed 4's world is alive. It breathes. That you'll be sailing your ship through the Caribbean and a fucking humpback whale will do a 360 heel flip next to you. Or Moby Dick himself will be weaving his way through a fucking British and Spanish firefight at sea while all of this is happening at sunset. And it is by far the best setting of any Assassin's Creed game. Hands down. Assassin's Creed 4's Caribbean is massive, yet explorable. There are sprawling mazes of cities to get lost in, like Kingston or Havana, and there's also more like lush rural areas like the Yucatan Peninsula, and then there's also like dozens of deserted islands and sunken shipwrecks to explore. And most of the time, these like actually beautiful side areas are filled with actually tangible rewards to like find and use for your benefit. These rewards often take the form of money, which you can use to upgrade your ship or your weapons, but there's also music sheets that in any other Assassin's Creed game would be the annoying collectible that you have to collect fucking 10 million of, but I actually wanted to collect the music sheets in this game. When you're driving around in GTA or Cyberpunk, there's always like a radio that you can switch the channels of and listen to music while you're driving. In Assassin's Creed 4, when you're sailing your ship, which is a large portion of this pirate game, mind you, there's also a radio, but it takes the form of the different sea shanties that your crew sings when you set sail. And the music sheets that are littered around the Caribbean for you to collect unlock new sea shanties that your crew will then sing while you're traveling. This is fucking awesome to me. This is a completely optional side thing that you could totally ignore. You can even turn off the shanties if you're not feeling them, but I fucking loved them. I know the words to like at least 3 full shanties now. I was so into them. Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises.
There she
way,
goes,
hey,
the
oh my
white
God.
whale.
Rises early in the morning. Put them in the scabbard with the hosepipe. And in any other Assassin's Creed game, there wouldn't be any real tangible results for you collecting the 10 million things that they want you to collect throughout the game. But in Black Flag, not only are there optional areas like often beautifully designed, but there's also actual beneficial treasure in them as well. All of this is to say that Assassin's Creed 4's world is the best in the series. It's the most vibrant and colorful. It's filled with things to do. And it feels the most alive. And I think a huge contributing factor as to why it feels so alive are the characters that populate it. Edward Kenway is the most interesting and engaging protagonist that I've seen in the Assassin's Creed series. At this point, I've played 5 of the games, and I'm about to move on to my 6th. And none of the other protagonists come even close to being as cool as Edward is. He's charismatic and cocky like Ezio, but I never got mad at how headstrong and stubborn he was like Connor. He treats others around him with respect and dignity if they've earned it in his eyes, but he also gets so incredibly shit on in this game. This game has just the best side characters out of any Assassin's Creed game that I've played, easily. Leonardo da Vinci was cool, Napoleon was cooler, none of them got shit on Blackbeard. Blackbeard is the ultimate pirate, and they absolutely portray him in that way. He's reckless and carefree. He only cares about his personal freedoms, but that makes him such a fucking good pirate. Assassin's Creed 4's story is serviceable. It's nothing special, but it's nothing horribly offensive either. But what makes it feel so fun are the colorful characters that are scattered throughout it. Blackbeard is just a phenomenally entertaining character who's super fun to watch, but easily my favorite character in this whole affair is James Kidd. I'm not gonna spoil anything if you haven't played the game, what happens to James Kidd, but fucking, if you know, you fucking know, dude. And they fucking got Ralph Ineson to play Charles Vane. Like, hello? If you don't know who Ralph Ineson is, you straight up don't consume enough media, bro. He's got the most recognizable voice of all time, but aside from that, he's just a goated actor who's in fucking goated projects, pun absolutely intended. I love these characters, and I love the fact that most of them die too. Other Assassin's Creed games really struggle to get me emotionally invested in their characters, so when Ezio's entire family dies at the beginning of Assassin's Creed 2, or Connor kills his best friend at the end of 3, I don't give a fuck about any of that shit. I don't care that these horribly emotional things are happening to these characters because these characters fail to be emotionally compelling in the first place. I did not have this problem with Assassin's Creed 4. There are a couple key character deaths in this game that actually kind of got to me. I wasn't fucking crying or anything. It's still a Ubisoft Assassin's Creed, don't get me wrong, but I was sad that I wasn't going to be able to play alongside these characters anymore when they died. And for a fucking Ubisoft game to do that to me, bro, like, come on, bro, that's kind of very unexpected. And to top it all off, like, the combat's pretty good, man. I have my problems with the naval combat system in this game. Mainly, I think the upgrade progression is too slow, but holy shit, I was having so much fun shooting cannons at the British. To get to the last mission of the game, you have to beat 2 of the largest, hardest ships in the game at the same time. And at that point, my ship was only halfway upgraded, but I decided to take them on anyways. And what ensued was the most intense hour of gaming I've had in a while. Having to maneuver yourself between 2 giant man-of-wars is already a fucking challenge, but then a storm picks up and water tornadoes start flying everywhere, and you're like, this is fucking impossible. And yeah, it's not fucking easy. That shit was really hard, but with enough focus and effort, I was able to board both of these ships, swashbuckle my way into killing everybody on board, and sink both of them. And look, I don't know if it was the absolute spell that this game put me under, or the fact that I've never played a From Software game in my life, but the sense of accomplishment I achieved after fucking beating those goddamn ships was unparalleled. I was a god gamer, and I still am, ladies. And notice how none of that had to do with like stealth or assassinating people. It's just raw action. And technically you can play all of these games being a fucking sword-wielding menace and just skipping all of the stealth assassinating part of the game. God knows that's how I ended Assassin's Creed 1, but it is so fucking hard to do, especially near the end of most of these games. But Assassin's Creed 4 puts you in a lot of these really action-heavy scenarios because it knows that the fucking pirate game in the series should be the one that forgoes the stealth missions the most. And this is true. The possibilities for combat in this game have made it the most explosive and action-packed game in the series that I've played so far. And honestly, to add, like, none of this is to say that the stealth sections are bad. There are some ship tailing missions in this game that are fucking annoying, low-key, but the actual stealth assassinating missions in this game on land, mind you, are like really intense and satisfying. And the options you have for approaching them are like super varied. If you just want to sneak past everyone, kill your target, and then sneakily dip, you totally can. Or if you're like me, you want to fucking leave no survivors and just murder your way to whoever your target is. There's even lots of opportunities to like completely ignore sneaking through the mission and just like climb up a tree and just air assassinate whoever your target is, and just run away while everyone's chasing you and lose them in like the forest. There's so many ways to fucking approach this shit. The point I'm trying to make here is that the agency I have as a player to explore and to do combat feels so much more refreshing and varied than other entries in the franchise. And with how realized and alive the world is, I actually like want to go explore all these places and do all these different approaches to combat. All of these crazy things go into making Assassin's Creed 4 my favorite entry in the franchise. Every other Assassin's Creed game I've played has been like a middling 5 out of 10 experience at best, and just a horrible, clunky nightmare of a video game at worst. But through enough purposeful gameplay decisions, I think Ubisoft was able to separate Assassin's Creed 4 from the pack and make an actually good game for once. Something that they've only been able to do a couple times since. I play video games because I value this kind of escapism, and especially in this weird transitory period of my life where I have to figure out adult shit and taxes and discipline and how to not undercook frozen chicken. I really, really appreciate this kind of escapism. And maybe it's the fact that over the past 6 months, I've been learning to engage a lot more with media instead of just blindly consuming it. Or maybe I just played this game at the right time in my life to experience it. But whatever the case is, I loved my time with this game. For the past week, I've plundered and pillaged to my heart's content. And for the first time in the history of the franchise, it didn't feel forced. I think the only reason this video exists is because more than anything, I was just happy that Ubisoft gave me a halfway decent experience for once. Because I have a lot of problems with this game that I didn't really go into. And there's so many games that are better than Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. But there's something so special about this game, dude. And hopefully this video has convinced you that if you've played the game or not, there's some light in this horribly dark franchise, because the experience that I just had was a very special one, and it's one that I will eternally treasure. But look, I'm a small YouTuber, right? You don't gotta take my word for it. Take it from the most respected video game fucking YouTuber on the platform, Video Game Donkey, right? What do you think?
Assassin's Creed sucks enormous gorilla dick.
Well, you can't win them all. I'll see you guys later. Way up she rises, way up she rises early in the morning. What will we do with a drunken sailor? What will we do with a drunken sailor? What will we do with a drunken sailor early in the morning? Way up she rises, way up she rises.
There she
way,
goes, the
oh my
white
God,
whale.
rises early in the morning. Put him in the scabbard with the hose pipe on him. Put him in the scabbard with the hose pipe on him. Put him in the scabbard with the hose pipe on him early in the morning. Way up she rises, way up she rises, way up she rises early in the morning. Put him in the break until he's sober. Put him in the break until he... What? Man, why'd we stop?